New at 10, as the nation marks the anniversary of the January 6th insurrection, U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar says security at the Capitol building has come a long way since last year. KMT News 3's Anthony Monzon had a conversation with the senator. Joins us in studio tonight. And Anthony, what exactly did you learn?
Well, Katie, Amy Klobuchar has been leading the Senate's bipartisan investigation of security failures at the Capitol building on January 6th. But on a human level, the Minnesota native was taking cover as the halls of Congress were being stormed last year. I caught up with the senator about her takeaways from the insurrection and what's being done to prevent history from repeating itself in the future.
I remember, of course, the horror. I remember the spray paint on the statues and the broken glass. I remember the brave officers with cuts on their faces, over 100 of them injured. But the most memorable thing for me was that long walk at 3:30 in the morning with Senator Blunt, the Republican from Missouri, and Vice President Pence and myself, just the three of us. We're the only ones left in the Senate chamber, and two young women with the mahogany box with the last of the electoral ballots walking through the broken glass to the House to finish our jobs. And 2 weeks later was the inauguration. Dan Quayle on the stage, George Bush, Mike Pence, and the point was, this is America, transition of power, peaceful. And no matter what disagreements we have on issues, and we have them, we know that there are people on both sides of the aisle that fervently believe things, that the citizens of our country in the Rochester area have big differences. But in the end, there is something larger than our differences that unites us, and that's our very democracy that we must respect and be the stewards for.
You've been involved in many ways, and looking into what happened during the insurrection. And so what are some of the biggest issues that your committee has really honed in on?
We issued a bipartisan report, and now we are making sure all of it is implemented. The first was a new police chief, new sergeants in arms. That clearly had to happen. This wasn't the fault of frontline officers. And number two, getting the equipment for the officers. 75% of them were in plain clothes. In many cases, the rioters had better gear on than the police did. We got that emergency funding. Haunting words of one officer over the police radio, does anyone have a plan? There wasn't a plan. Making sure there are always operational plans in place. Passing the law to make sure the National Guard can be called in more easily.
One thing that does stick out, of course, is the ideology that kind of led to the insurrection, of course, is still out there. And, those kind of sentiments. And so do you feel like there is a risk of something similar to this happening again in the future?
There are always threats to our democracy. Many of them are actually from foreign lands. What we saw with Russia messing around with our elections and threats on the cyber front. And then there are threats on our own homeland, and we know that. And those threats aren't going to stop, but it's how we respond to them that matters. And I feel like, well, anything, of course, can happen when you're dealing with the leading democracy in the world. Anything can happen. But we're in a much safer place and a better place planning-wise and security-wise than we were a year ago.
And a new CBS poll shows 89% of Democrats and 48% of Republicans worried democracy is under attack believe political violence is a major threat. Senator Klobuchar says she strongly supports the new Capitol Police Chief's plan to hire more than 200 additional officers. Katie?
Thanks, Anthony. Senator Klobuchar adds it is a very important week for everyone to not just thank police at the Capitol, but officers everywhere for their work to keep us safe.